Welcome, everybody. My name is David Irvin, and I will be moderating this live streaming session. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Ghana, Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, the Métis Nation, Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. I want to welcome everybody to this first session hosted by the Town of Cochrane Social Recovery Task Force. We are very excited to be offering this important community conversation. Back to school is often a time where both parents and students experience some back to school jitters, but this year is a little different. With the additional layer of COVID-19, many are experiencing worry and fear with the thought of going back to school. I want to thank first of all, the Cochrane Alliance Church for offering this space to us, complimentary, to have this important conversation. So it's an amazing venue, and we appreciate this contribution to your community. I would also like to personally thank the Town of Cochrane for their efforts and commitment to do this. Susan Flowers and your colleagues on Town Council, Kim and your colleagues in FCSS, we are extremely fortunate, folks, to have a group of leaders in our community who are committed to supporting families and supporting children, and that's why we're here tonight. And just in the spirit of lightness and humility, I wore my Mr. Rogers socks tonight. So I don't know if the camera can pick up those socks, but anyway, we're here in the spirit of goodwill. We all have one thing in common, and that is that we care about children, we care about their mental and physical well-being, and we're here to support parents in this community. And we are very fortunate that we have leaders in our community with this shared commitment. Back to school, being online, in person, at home, or a hybrid model, all come with different challenges for families. There is no single right answer for everyone. Everyone must gather information and determine what model is best for themselves, their children, and their personal circumstances. Tonight, we will explore the various options together and share tips and strategies to support you and your children. The panelists, we are very fortunate to have a very prestigious panel tonight. The panelists will each speak from their perspective on their roles in the community and getting back to school. Panelists will be given 5 minutes, a 5 to 7 minute opportunity to share their perspective, and they'll just want to let you know that they'll be having a warning after 5 minutes. After the presentations, I will share the questions that come in for the appropriate panelist. I will make sure that they are presented respectfully. If some of the questions are similar, I will fold them together to get through as many as we can so that we can end promptly in an hour and a half at 8:30. We are very pleased that we are able to offer this session both in person and virtually. With COVID, there are some additional measures that we have to take to ensure the health and safety of everyone here with us this evening. Please use the hand sanitizers at the back of the room before you enter, and ensure that you sanitize prior to entering the room. We also ask you to maintain physical distance throughout the evening. If you have a mask, we will ask you to please wear it while you are not sitting in your designated seat. At the end of the session, we will provide directions for exiting the facility. So let's get to why we're here, and I will begin to introduce our panelists. To start the evening, I am pleased to introduce Susan Flowers, Town Councillor and member of the Social Recovery Task Force. Susan will share information on the role of the task force. Susan.
David. On behalf of the Social Recovery Task Force, welcome everyone. The task force was established in May of this year by the Town of Cochrane Mayor and Council. The purpose is to assist in the social recovery of our community due to COVID-19. The task force is looking for opportunities to support and enhance the well-being, safety, and resilience of our residents. Membership on the task force includes Mayor Janung, who's on holidays, Kim Krawick, manager of FCSS and chair of our committee, Terry Lauer of FCSS, Natalia Tapia Glenn, who is a Rotary Club member, Shara Nicole, who is with Helping Hands, Jan Tracy, who is a Cochrane Activette, Lauren Delahunt with Victim Services, Cindy Isles with Big Hill Haven Society, Nicole Copses with FCSS, and myself. To get started, the task force focused on conducting an environmental scan to identify emerging needs coming from the community and gaps in service. The task force developed and implemented 2 surveys. One was for the community residents to help us understand the social, emotional, and financial impacts of COVID-19. The other survey was for nonprofit organizations to find out how they were coping through the pandemic. We received a tremendous response to the surveys, which helped us to identify a number of key areas where we as a task force could offer support. We heard about financial struggles, challenges associated with isolation, and the impact that not seeing friends and family was having on people. We heard about loneliness and the worry that people have for their own health and the health of those that they love. We heard that parents were concerned about their children and were worried for what would happen in the fall and going back to school. It's also interesting to note that we heard that the pandemic brought about some positives to our community as well. We heard that the pandemic brought our community together to support each other and offer help to our neighbors. We heard positives about the world slowing down, that the pandemic allowed us to focus on our relationships and our families, and that we had some time to try new activities and to do those things on our list that we never seemed to get a chance to do. So we've been studying all the information that we heard, and we're doing our best to respond. The task force will be putting together monthly topics to engage the community in conversation. We will provide information and resources to ensure that residents have the knowledge and support that they need. So on behalf of the task force, I'd like to thank our panelists who are here tonight, and I look forward to hearing from them. It takes courage to enter into these difficult conversations. I would also like to thank David Irvine for moderating this important work with help from his partner, Val. And to all of you here and those watching at home, for coming tonight, for being ready and open to learn and support one another. We are truly all in this together.
Thank you, Susan. Stacy Lowe, General Manager of the Town of Cochrane Legislative and Protective Services, will now explain the town's role and ECC during the pandemic. Stacy.
Good evening. In addition to being the General Manager of Legislative and Protective Services for the town, I also hold the title of Director of Emergency Management. The ECC, as being referenced, is the Emergency Coordination Center, and it's part of the management structure that is contained within the town's municipal emergency plan. That plan is intended to provide the structure for how the town will respond in an emergency. And while the pandemic is an emergency, the pandemic is not the town's to manage. The town's emergency is business continuity and continued service delivery in a safe manner for our staff and for our community. The Emergency Coordination Center is still very active and is closely monitoring changes in the current situation, Alberta Health Services protocols, and recommendations coming from the province. We are all learning and adapting as we go. Currently, as of 4 o'clock this afternoon, there are 3 active cases in Cochrane. So with that, we continue to encourage our citizens to make personal responsible choices, to maintain those physical distances, to wash your hands, and follow all the other protocols we have all come to know. Additionally, the town continues to encourage our community to wear a mask when you are in a situation where physical distancing cannot be maintained and where appropriate for yourself. Finally, I would like to remind everyone to be patient. We are all learning as we go. We are all doing the best that we can in a situation that not any of us could have predicted, and one that is continuing to change rapidly. So on behalf of the town, the ECC is here and willing to support where and when appropriate and possible, and I thank you for your time.
It reminds me, Stacy, of my mantra these days, grant grace. We're all learning, and let's be patient with each other and ourselves, right? Thank you for your leadership in our community. Next, we will hear from Eric Howie with the Cochrane Addiction and Mental Health Services. Eric is a mental health therapist and social worker. He lives in Cochrane, and his children attend Cochrane Schools. His current work at the clinic focuses on children and youth. Eric. And you figured out the mic.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. As David has said, I'm a child and adolescent therapist with Cochrane Addiction and Mental Health Clinic. I'm also a parent here in the community, and I have one child returning to school this fall and one child who is still too young for school and is at home. Like many, our family has been juggling all of the demands of work and childcare, and more recently juggling the thoughts of what returning to school is going to look like for our oldest. A little bit about Cochrane Mental Health. We've been operating at full capacity almost the entire time the pandemic has been happening. We transitioned overnight to a telehealth service. And so we've been doing our appointments primarily over the phone and via Zoom. And occasionally we have been offering some in-person appointments on a limited basis. We are a goal-oriented service, and we offer episodic care for mental health in the community. The phone number to access care for Cochrane Addiction and Mental Health is via Access Mental Health, which is 403-943-1500. Again, that's 403-943-1500. So I'm going to take some time and make some general remarks about anxiety and the return to school, and then also some more specific recommendations for you as a parent. So I think the first thing, and maybe one of the most important things for folks to know, that anxiety is an incredibly normal, healthy response to uncertainty and risk at any time in life. And most certainly during this pandemic, it has been a time of uncertainty and risk for folks. And so to feel anxiety and to feel worry and fear is a normal response. In some ways, it would be more concerning if you were feeling incredibly okay about the situation we have before us. And I think the other thing to think about with children is that their worries might be different than us as adults. For kids who have been home for a long time, I know with ours, we've been talking about what it's going to look like to be away from us again during the day. The kids have been with us or with a parent almost 24/7 for the last 5 or 6 months. So there may be some fears for the children that are different than your fears as a parent. I think the other thing, and Stacy spoke to this, nobody has a crystal ball. Everybody's doing their best. And the strange thing about this pandemic is that if we do an amazing job, if we do a great job, a perfect job, nothing happens. And that's the best outcome. But that's a terrible reward cycle for our brains. Our brains are based on getting a reward for an action or a behavior. That's how kids work. That's how we work as adults. But if we do a great job, nobody gets sick. And everybody stays healthy. And that sometimes makes it hard. There's also a lot of invisible health challenges. It's not obvious if somebody is immunocompromised or has more reason to fear. So I think we have to offer people a lot of space to make the choices that are right for them and right for their family. And withhold judgments about the choices that everybody is making that are different. So on to some maybe more practical things for you as parents out there. I think the very first and foremost thing for you to know as a parent is that your child is watching you all the time. They are watching you for cues about how you are feeling, how you are doing, how you are handling the worry about returning to school. And so as a parent, it's your job to role model to them some sense of calm and confidence about going forward, but that doesn't mean you need to be happy or excited about it. And to offer the child some space for co-regulation. This can feel scary, but I will be here for you no matter what happens. You're looking for a sense of realism, maybe not optimism, maybe not pessimism, but realism that validates some of the feelings that they may be feeling. And it can be all sorts of different feelings. Some kids I know are incredibly excited about going to back, and that's great. Let's celebrate that. And the other thing I think that children sometimes miss from us as parents is that a lot of our self-care and a lot of the work that we do to manage our own mental wellness happens when they are in bed or when they are at school. And so we sometimes have to make it more obvious or let them know, hey, after you went to bed, I went for a dog walk to take care of myself tonight because I was feeling worried. Because they don't always get to see that because we're busy with the hustle and bustle of dishes or getting somebody to, well, not really much sports practice these days, but moving kids around and doing the things that we need to do as parents. So I think the next most important thing you can do as a parent is to provide age-appropriate information to children about what they can expect. Children often misjudge scenarios, and they can sometimes misread information because they'll catch part of a conversation from down the hall that you are having with your spouse or partner, or they overhear something on the radio while you're driving. So they don't always have all the information. For me, a really great example of this, when I was involved in the fire response to Fort McMurray, the children that came to Calgary, I remember there was one day that there was the smell of smoke in Calgary, and for them, they didn't have a concept that they were over 900 kilometers away from Fort McMurray. It felt really real, and they worried about the fire coming to them here in Calgary. And so sometimes you have to give them more information and go over the parent question and answer that Rocky View Schools has made for all of the kids and the parents. And the third thing that you can do as a parent is to provide your child with healthy routines: sleep, exercise, food. These are the variables that we can control in an otherwise uncertain time, and controlling those variables for our children will help to give them a sense of certainty going forward. The more predictable the future is, the easier it is to maintain our mental well-being when other things feel uncertain, like the pandemic. And this applies to you too as parents, and this applies to me, and I know I need to be better at sometimes shutting the computer off and going to bed at an earlier time. And the fourth thing that I'd like to talk about that you can do as a parent is to revisit with your children when they've faced a similarly challenging experience in their life. Maybe it was going to summer camp for the first time, learning to ride a bike, or that very first sleepover with a friend. This gives you a great opportunity to talk about their capacity to do scary things and how they translated this to success and how they can translate that same success into the fall at school, despite some of the fears they might be feeling. And the last thing is to be playful and have fun. Our kids need us to play with them. That's how they connect with us. That's how they spend time with us. So play with your children, especially right now as they face the anxiety of going back to school. Thank you very much. And once again, if you need mental health support in Cochrane, the phone number to call is 403-943-1500. Have a great evening and stay safe, everyone.
Eric, thanks for humanizing all that, making it all real and making it real practical. You're a great resource for our community. Thank you. All right. And we have all kinds of support here. Look at this. Thanks. Now we would like to hear, and we have the good fortune of having Dr. Jennifer Corrales with us. Dr. Corrales has a medical practice here in Cochrane. She is passionate about this community and has been on several committees working to make Cochrane as healthy as possible. Dr. Corellis, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, David. I appreciate the introduction. I am a family doctor here in Cochrane, as you stated, as well as in Calgary. And I have two little guys going into grade 4 and 7 this fall. I'd like to thank everyone for the invitation to this panel, as well as for the opportunity to represent the up-to-date scientific medical facet of this very complex issue. I would like to mention, oh look, my slides are up, good. I would like to mention before I go on that my slides and my information are up to date as of 6 p.m. yesterday. As you all know, the medical information has come in hard and fast since December 2019. So as of the time I logged on to the update yesterday at 6 o'clock and was part of a panel of infectious disease specialists, both adult and pediatric, as well as some school board members, this information was up to date. By the time we turned off the update at 8 o'clock, we were probably sorely out of date. So this is an amalgamation of 6 months and then 2 hours and then 5 minutes of up-to-date COVID information. I would like to also say that while some of this information might seem a little bit basic, as I was putting the talk together, I realized that as much information as there is out there, there's also a lot of misinformation. So I do feel the need to repeat a lot of it, probably ad nauseum, to make sure that the most useful scientific stuff is out there. This is what we know is true today. If I can have the next slide, please. So I'll take you all back to biology class. A virus is a virus. It will last for 2 weeks. It will work its way out of your body. There's nothing we can really do about it. So when you do have a virus, if you come to see your doctor within a week, the probability is it'll go away, so they won't do anything for you. Viruses are transmitted in multiple different ways. Number one is contact, that is direct, so your handshake, and indirect, so your doorknobs and your handrails. There's droplet transmission as well, and kids licking doorknobs or licking handrails fall somewhere in between those. The droplet transmission is the larger particles, so those are the ones that are about 1 meter in range, again accounting for our 2 meter social distancing. These are the ones that are expelled from your respiratory system, yuck, when you sneeze, when you cough, when you talk loudly, when you sing. The airborne particles are smaller particles, and those last in the air for a little bit longer, about 3-4 hours, and they cover a longer distance. There's also fecal-oral transmission, which is now starting to become relevant with COVID, but that's a little bit less relevant, and other modes of transmission. So the predominant route of transmission for COVID is contact and droplet. It is not airborne, okay? So airborne is like measles. So in the era of measles, when one child walked into a classroom where no one was immune, there were no vaccines, 20 kids would get it because it would hang out in the air. COVID-19 is not airborne. It does not float from class to class. As of July, we are finding that in PCR testing of positive patients, there's not competent virus in 10 days post-symptom onset. So if you were to get COVID-19 today, about 10 days from now, you would not have viable, replicatable virus in your system at all. The problem is that RNA, even the dead RNA, will be in your system for about 6 to 12 weeks. So that's why you're seeing kids with repeated positive tests. But those, after 10 days, 14 days, those are not going to be replicatable, reproducible, viable virus, okay? The other point that I do want to make is that there should be no reoccurrence once you're clear, once you've had COVID and once you've cleared it. I do seem to recall that at 4:30 today, there seemed to be one case of it somewhere, but Dr. Hu, the medical officer of health, did mention that yesterday that man was found and they did genotype him and they think that he has a second strain. So he got 2 different strains. So once you're clear, you're immune, you cannot get COVID-19, you can't give it. So again, on this panel, Dr. Hu was actually fairly positive, and I know that we hear a lot of the negatives when we look at the news today, and so I did want to temper that a little bit with some of the positives that he gave us. Overall, in Alberta, we're doing a good job. Acute care capacity is over 4 times the amount that it was when all of this started in March. So we will not be overrun. We did a great job at flattening the curve, so there was a lull in the cases over the summer. It increased a little bit in July, but largely due to identifiable Gen X millennial hangouts. So now, as we've heard from Dr. Hinshaw, 70% of cases are within that sort of mid-range age, 10 to 39-year-olds as of August, leading to Dr. Hinshaw's warning of, okay guys, if you go to a movie, then go to brunch, then go for beers, that's still, your small groups are still large exposures, okay? Dr. Hu is very optimistic about the fact that there are multiple vaccines in phase 3 trials at the moment. And when it comes to school, I've heard lots of people say we're going back to school in the same state we were when we left. But that's actually not the case. Number one being mask availability, and now there's large-scale production of that. About 10 million a month are being made, and they're available online. You can get personalized ones. Everyone's set. Children are still a small case of COVID-19 cases. They still comprise only 1 to 5 cases of COVID worldwide. Very few are critically ill. Most of them are mild. And children do tend to have better outcomes overall. Although children do seem to have increased viral load and a bit more prolonged shedding, they don't seem to be the super spreaders that we had originally thought they would be. In fact, many of our kids are getting their COVID from their parents. In general, can we move slides? Thank you. So this is going to be a bit of a quick bit of bullet points for generalities and relevant COVID information. Number one, masks are helpful. Again, it's that droplet transmission that you're helping to mitigate, so help us help you. There are no treatments in the pediatric population. There are few options, but only in severely ill adults. Hydroxychloroquine does not work. Ingested Lysol does not work. Please don't drink it. IV UV does not exist. So again, please stick to the relevant scientific information. I do have a couple notes here about mask exemptions and asthma and chronic disease. I will end by saying, because I'm running out of time, that there is not a lot of medical reasons for mask exemption, and that's coming from federal, provincial bodies, it's coming from the College of Physicians and Surgeons. There's not a great deal of reasons to be mask exempt. We know that there's benefit to wearing masks. I know there's questions about asthma and chronic disease, and I can answer that in the panel. But in general, if you have well-controlled asthma, you are at low risk for any COVID complications. Because I'm seeing it so much in my practice, I did put a slide on mental health. It's one of the fallouts from all of this, and I did include in my slides, which I hope will be included in the presentation, some resources in terms of mental health and in terms of up-to-date scientific COVID information. Eric did such a great job that I don't feel the need to belabor the point, but please do take care of yourselves. And I hope I'll be able to answer some more medical questions in the question period.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Dr. Krause, we appreciate you making this actually understandable. So thank you for explaining it so simply for us. Greatly appreciated. Now, we got a little mic problem. We're going to switch mics. Okay. What a team. All this tech support. Good, we're good, thank you. All right, we now have the privilege of hearing from representatives from our school boards. Our first speaker is Myra D'Souza, who represents Cochrane on the Calgary Catholic School Board and has served in many capacities. Myra received an O Canada Award for her outstanding international and national volunteer work. She is a strong voice and supporter of diversity and inclusion. Myra, welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much, David. Really, really excited to be here. Thank you so much to the organizers for doing this. As I am an elected official, I'm your trustee. I represent wards 1, 2, and Cochrane. So thank you very much again. You know, we just have a few minutes. We've assigned a few minutes, so I don't want to just go on and on. I'm sure a lot of you have questions to ask, so get to the meat of the matter. I was asked to just talk about what trustees do. So we are elected during the municipal elections, and we're charged with the governance, governing the affairs of our district. And so, of course, as Calgary Catholic, we govern the affairs of the Calgary Catholic District in Calgary, Cochrane, Airdrie, and Chestermere. And so what we do is we set strategy. We set the district's priorities. And Calgary Catholic has 4 district priorities that we have set this year, namely student success, student wellness, faith formation, and First Nation, Métis, and Inuit success. And you know, we take that very seriously. We are also advocates for you. We are sort of a conduit between you and the government. So this year, you know, with all the COVID and the funding cuts and all of that, we've been extremely busy. Our summer we have not had a summer, really. We have literally been running around, having all kinds of meetings, advocating with our MLAs on your behalf so that we listen to you, and we want to ensure that your kids and your students are getting the best possible education possible. And so that's what we do. The other thing that we do is we hire our chief superintendent, and then we task the chief superintendent to run all the things that we set in terms of our priorities, our goals, our standards that we set for education for your children. And then we evaluate our chief superintendent to ensure that he is doing what we ask him to do. And so we have one employee, the chief superintendent, who is mandated to do all of that. So that's the chief superintendent's job, to do all the operational stuff. We do the governing, we do setting the strategy, the mission, the vision, setting the priorities and all that, ensuring that, you know, the money that we are tasked with, millions and millions of your tax dollars, are being efficiently and effectively spent for your children and for the education of your children. So basically that is in a nutshell. I don't want to sort of just go on and on, because my colleague is going to be talking next and giving you a really good, solid understanding of education and what our plans are on our goals and things like that. And of course, there'll be lots of questions. So I thank you again for your time and for caring about your children, for engaging with us so that we can represent you. And again, I'm very, very pleased to be representing you as your trustee. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Myra, for your service in our community. Now we would like to hear from Mary Martin, and we are very grateful that Mary came out from Calgary. Mary is the chair of the Calgary Catholic School Board. Mary has served in many capacities over the past 13 years, both locally and provincially. Mary will be sharing her presentation tonight on her work with Calgary Catholic School Board. Mary, thank you very much for joining us.
I don't want to lose my notes. Just a sec here. The older you get, the harder it is. Anyway, I just wanted to express my appreciation as well to the organizers of this important event. Looking after our kids is probably the most important function of a society. It's near and dear to everyone's hearts. And, you know, I can remember as time stood still, getting the call over the weekend, mid-March, that was going to turn education on its head. And it certainly did, not just for Calgary Catholic, but across Alberta. I'm so appreciative of the admin staff, the teaching staff, and our families who were able to pivot in 48 hours and figure out how to deliver education differently. And little did we know that we would be doing this for the foreseeable future. It's become the new normal. We have learned a lot about COVID over the time that we've been exposed to it. We have at Calgary Catholic an excellent relationship with our medical officer of health, whose advice we depend on. That consistent voice of knowledge and rational decision-making is really, really important. Trustee D'Souza was quite correct. Calgary Catholic, like many school boards in the province, have spent the summer working very closely with their chief superintendents and senior admin, and we're no different. We had a series of special meetings that we called. We engaged our Minister of Health over a number of issues in writing, funding for PPE, care taken to open under the best scenario possible, possibly a look at regionalization as well. We know that COVID, its presence is highly variable from parts of the province. We've met with opposition critic Sarah Hoffman, Chief of Staff Noles. We've met with Mayor Naheed Nenshi, who has a very much a vested interest in safety of Calgary's constituents as well, and have accepted an invitation to present. Trustee D'Souza is quite correct. This is, the managing of a COVID pandemic is an operational matter, but the Board of Trustees at the end of the day, the buck stops with us, and we have been very, very heavily invested in the conversations that have gone on, and we've used our roles as politicians to the fullest extent possible to ensure that we have the resources that we need, given the limitations that we're experiencing. Our admin has communicated, despite the fact that it's the summer and people are away, 23 at least at last count communications to our families. We're on our 4th iteration of a resumption booklet. The last version came out August 24th with the most current government publications within it. We surveyed our parents a couple of times toward the end of June, and it was really interesting speaking to the mental health concerns. In all 4 of the metro jurisdictions, about 10 to 15% of our families identified themselves being anxious or highly anxious about the prospect of return. So this is a significant number. We also know that it rose during the summer as well as the cases went up a little bit. So during the summer, we continued to engage our families through Thought Exchange, had a great response given the timing of the year, and that was specific to masking. And we got a very strong sense of comfort from those families who wanted to see masking. And for that reason, we actually did extend our masking protocols from K to 12. And that allows us to meet or exceed the standards that have been put in place. And to date, that's been well received, although I appreciate that there will be some who would prefer that that not occur. We have set up, mocked up videos for what school looks like as we re-enter so that families can familiarize themselves with the new processes and be comfortable with them before they come in. And we have just very briefly budgeted 30 contingency teachers. We have moved all of our nighttime caretakers to daytime to help with the enhanced cleaning. That is going to be a comfort for our families. And we have applied to use more of our reserves to the minister that will further support cleaning and supports for our kids. So we are looking forward to welcoming our kids back, to welcoming our staff back. We're realistic, but we're optimistic at the same time. And I'll wait for questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Mary. I can only imagine what school boards must be going through these days. And I'm really inspired by the diversity of the people on this panel. And we just about got it all covered. I'm just and so inspired by it. The next school division represented is Rocky View Schools. Presenting tonight is Fiona Gilbert, the Cochrane's Public School Board Trustee. Fiona has served on the board since 2013. She's an active member of the Alberta School Boards Association. Fiona has 2 school-aged children who attend schools in the Cochrane community. Welcome, Fiona.
Thank you, David, for that introduction, and thank you to Myra and Mary, who sort of laid the scene as far as the role of trustees here within our education system. And when we were sort of asked to do this, the question that was posed to me sort of within this 5-minute time frame was sort of, how is Rocky View Schools dealing with back to school? And a lot of it is operational, and I can't sort of speak to a lot of the specifics as far as what's happening at Fireside School or Glenbow Elementary and those kinds of things. I guess I'll just take this time to sort of give some overarching kinds of themes as to how we are approaching back to school here, as it's coming up like kind of next week, I think. And you know, back to school is an exciting time. Like I've always commented that the energy in a building on those first couple of days of school is just tremendous. And I really don't think this year's going to be any different. That excitement of the kids in the building, the teachers in the building, I truly believe kids have missed being at school. I know that teachers and staff have missed seeing the kids, and so the reconnecting of teachers and staff and kids and families, I think will be great. It's been a little bit longer. Usually it's kind of a 2-month period. What are we at now? 6 months or thereabouts, and so I think it's going to be great. But it will also cause some anxiety, and we've heard that, and we've heard from the mental health expert that anxiety is okay. It's a healthy response to an unknown situation, and you know, there are going to be some differences as kids come back to school. But I think part of what I want to say here today too is a lot of it's going to look the same. There's going to be staff there, there's going to be teachers there that are there to support kids and help them have fun and play and all those things. So there's going to be a lot the same as well. And I think we just need to remember that. They're going to get recess, they're going to be able to hang out with their friends, they're going to, you know, they might have a spelling test or a math test kind of thrown in there too. So there's going to be lots of similarities. And from a Rocky View perspective, we've put together a reentry plan for Rocky View Schools based on the guidelines of the government and Alberta Health. And all of those guidelines are available on alberta.ca website. And so we're taking that and we're framing it for Rocky View School. So how can we make it work in Cochrane as well as Airdrie and Chestermere and all of our other communities? So how do we take that and make it work for our local community? And as always, student and staff safety and well-being are priority. More so this year, we sort of focus on that, but that's always a priority for us. Student learning, it will continue. Kids are going to learn. It doesn't matter if we're in scenario 1, scenario 2, scenario 3, if you choose in-home, if you can choose online, kids are going to continue to learn. And while we can't we can't get rid of all risk. There's always a risk in everything that we do. We can't eliminate it, but we can minimize those risks by working together, and it's going to require the collective effort of everybody involved in schools, but also the wider community. We all have a role to play in this. And so as we look to back to school, there will be different protocols in place. We know that. We see that when we go to the grocery store. We see that when we go to the movie house. We see that as we walk down the street, whether that's people in masks, whether that's hand sanitizer stations, whether that's little stickers on the wall and arrows pointing which way to go. That's all. You're all going to see that when you come back into the school building too. So there's lots of different key elements of the multi-layered approach that we're taking with the back to school. One of them on their own is not enough. They all work together. So it's the staying home when you're sick, doing the health check, hand sanitizing, cohorting, physical distancing, all of those things work together to keep our students safe, keep our staff safe, and keep our community safe. And that's really, as we look to open schools, we will have all of those things in place. So really just to reemphasize that we are all in this together, and I know that's a little bit of a catchphrase that's being used, but it's really true. As parents, we are counting on you to do the daily health check. Don't send your kid to school when they're sick. I know I've got 2 teenagers now, so they can stay home by themselves, but I know when they were younger, it's like, oh, it's just a little sniffle. You really have a tummy ache? I don't think you do. You're going to school. Don't make that choice because you're putting the rest of the community at risk. Keep your kids home, and with us all playing all playing our roles, we will keep kids safe. And from a Rocky View Schools perspective too, and I know it's the same with Calgary Catholic, if you're not feeling comfortable coming back to school, that's okay. There are options available. There are learning online options as well, and we will look to support families and students who have chosen that path for whatever reason. As we've said, I think a couple times here tonight, there's no right or wrong. It's just whatever works for you and whatever works for your family. Rocky View Schools is there to support the choice that you make and the decision that you make. And yeah, let's have some grace, I think was the word that was used, and some kindness as we work this together. Principals are back in schools now. Teachers come back in school on Thursday, but I do know that they've been working hard all summer. Just because technically they don't start work until Thursday, I know teachers have been working really hard and thinking about and trying to figure out how it's going to look for them. So look for more information coming from your school principal by the end of the week if you haven't already. I suspect that a lot of us have already heard from our principal, but more information to come as the start of school gets closer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Fiona. The thought came to my mind that how important it is. My children have launched, but I was thinking back what it would be like, how anxious I would feel as a parent sending my kids to school these days, and how important it would be to not take my anxiety out on the teachers and the schools. That, you know, what was just represented in these last three speakers particularly is teachers are with us. They're, you know, we're in this literally together. It's not a we and them. We're in this together, and let's bring compassion and goodwill and the spirit of love in this work that we'll get through this. We will get through this. So thank you for all your inspiration. So moving on the theme. Oh, and by the way, I want to mention, we are set up here. You wonder what this computer is actually doing a purpose here. We are set up, I just want to address the online community. You are welcome to send in questions. We will have ample time here in a few minutes for some questions. For any of the specific panel members, or if there's any questions that got raised, we will be able to receive those questions through the system here. So please feel free to send those along. All right. Here to discuss homeschooling is Amy Cousin. Amy is currently the Assistant Program Director for Home Education with Koinonia at Home. Her role is to assist families with home education. Amy is an Alberta certified teacher. She has also been home educating for the last 13 years. Amy, thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I am Assistant Program Director with Koinonia at Home, and nobody can ever say it right, so it's a tricky name. And I'm here just to talk about the different options for homeschooling in Alberta. Homeschooling has been on the rise in Alberta for quite a few years. It's really going up, but this year has seen a tremendous surge. So my role here today is just to talk about the different options with homeschooling and how it can look for parents that want to choose this option. When you're looking at getting started, I'll just fly through everything quickly so I don't go over my time. You have two choices when you're looking at starting homeschooling. Right now you can choose to homeschool through your resident school board, which is Rocky View School Division and the Calgary Catholic Division. They are setting up different home learning options. I'm not going to speak to those because every board and every school is doing them a little bit differently, and I don't want to get any misinformation out there. But the second option that you can choose as a parent in Alberta is to homeschool through what's called a non-resident school board. I work with a non-resident school board, but there's many all over the province, and you can join any non-resident school board that you wish. There's non-resident school boards that are part of a Catholic school or part of a private school, part of a Christian school, secular. There's many options, and you can pick whichever one best suits your family across the province. The difference between going with a resident school board and a non-resident school board is mostly people pick that choice if they're looking for a board that has been in home education for quite a while. There's boards that have been doing this for dozens of years. So that's the biggest difference. Neither one is right or wrong. It's just a matter of picking what is best for your family, for your needs for this year. I'm just going to address the non-resident school board options. So when you go with a non-resident school board, you can pick the program that you want to do, and I'm going to briefly explain those. So the first option, it's called a teacher-directed option. This is often what you'll see as an online option. In a teacher-directed program, the teacher is responsible for the entirety of the program. They plan the classes, they do all of the teaching. The parent comes alongside as a support, but they aren't responsible for doing the teaching, the evaluation, doing any of the teaching role. The materials are sent to your family from the school, so you don't pick textbooks, you don't pick curriculum. There's no cost for joining this program. There's also no reimbursement. I'll explain that in the parent-directed end. But everything is designed for you, and you just simply log on to your online classroom and the teacher takes care of it. The second option, the second style, is called parent-directed homeschooling. So this is an option where you, the parent, design what you want in your program. You pick your curriculum, you decide your topics, you make all of the decisions. You are in the driving seat of that type of education. You have a support teacher that's assigned to you that comes alongside. Some school boards call those facilitators, support teachers, home education managers. In all cases, this is an Alberta certified teacher who is really familiar with the curriculum, really familiar with the requirements, and comes alongside you to support you in your decisions. They're there to answer questions, help you make your education plan. They'll be there. They do 2 home visits during the year to help see how things are going towards your goals, support you with any questions you have. So in a parent-directed option, you're not left alone. You have a lot of support in terms of your decisions, but the decisions are yours to make in the end. There's also no cost for this in terms of registering with a school board, and you are eligible for $850 in funding that goes from reimbursement for your curriculum. It's things that go towards your child's education plan. You submit your sheets to the school, and they provide you back that funding to help support your program. Yeah, so 2 home visits, I mentioned that. That's with the support teacher. That can be in your home, or it can be in a place that you choose close by your home. Usually it's in your home. And the final option is called shared responsibility. It used to be called blended. You might hear it called both. And that just means that you can pick part of your program to be online with the teacher and part of your program that you, the parent, take responsibility for. The biggest thing to know if you're looking at this homeschooling option and you want to go with a non-resident school board, there is a registration deadline of September 30th, and I can't emphasize that enough. School boards, it's a government cutoff that's the funding deadline. So if you want to go with this option, it's really important that you make that decision well before September 30th and contact the boards. They need enough time to process your registration, get you set up with a support teacher, and give you all of the support and everything that you need in order to have a successful year of home education. So mark that on your calendars if this is something you're looking for, is you want to have that decision made well before September 30th to give time for everything to go through. So that's everything in a quick nutshell about if you're looking at homeschooling in Alberta. If you want more information, there's a great Facebook group called Alberta Homeschooling, a wealth of information on there, or you can just look up the resident school boards to get specific questions answered. Thank you for having me.
Amy. Thank you. There's just so many options available to families these days. It's amazing. Thank you, Amy. So our last speaker will tell you about the resources that are available to you. Lauren Delahunt is the Executive Director of Cochrane Victim Services. She sits on the Social Recovery Task Force and has been involved with the development of an app that shares community resources. And I'm assuming you'll tell us about that.
I will.
Okay,
Thank you,
good.
David.
Thank you. Thank you, Lauren.
So thank you for having me here today. At the beginning of COVID, we saw a rise in people on Facebook over social media, and they were trying to find resources. They were reaching out on different groups, not really knowing where to turn. So Victim Services, along with other like-minded organizations in our community, got together and started a discussion. And this is something that I'm so proud to be part of Cochrane, and I'm exceptionally proud of the way that our organizations are able to work together to come up with new ideas, create together, and build on what we have. And so one of the ways that we did this is through the establishment and development of a CARES app. And so what this app does is it takes the resources that are available within Cochrane and area, and it puts it on one platform. One website that functions as an app that anyone can go on and search up resources that they're looking for in a quick, easy, efficient way. And so our app that we've put together is called CARES. It's Cochrane and Area Resources and Essential Services. This app continues to grow and expand, and it will continue to get bigger as we have people from within Cochrane checking out the resources that are there, utilizing them, and adding resources that they don't see on there that other people in the community might use. If you want to look at our app, if you're looking for some resources, or if you have anything to add to it, the link will be in the comment section on the Facebook feed, and we would love to hear your feedback and continue to expand the app. You can also check out the app through Cochrane Victim Services on Facebook or on Instagram. There should be some links there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. All right, well, first of all, thank you to all of you. I know you're all very passionate about your work and the contribution that you make here, so to have to limit it to 5 minutes, I'm assuming, was very challenging, and you all did an amazing job, so we're right on target here. We're gonna spend now the next half an hour answering some questions. We have received some questions, and I want to, I'll share some of those. But you know what, I just thought we might take an opportunity. Are there any questions that have risen from the audience here that you want to ask any of the panel members before I share some of these questions? Any of you want to ask any of them specifically, or anything? I mean, we have a pretty rich resource behind us here and up here, and so I would just say let's take advantage of this. This would be crazy not to do that. Anybody have any questions from the crowd? Any more questions that you might have? Okay, I'll give you another chance. If you change your mind, just raise your hand. We'll be happy to entertain you. Okay, so let's start with this one. This might be a good one for the doctor, for our physician back here, but others may feel free to stand up and offer your perspective. We understand that there's likely to be a spike in cases. What will be considered an outbreak? Will individual schools end up closing if an outbreak occurs? So we may have one of the school boards answer that one. But who would like to jump in and answer that one? You want to do that? Okay.
I brought my handy dandy, a resource guide for schools before, during, and after a COVID-19 outbreak. This is it. It's a 45 page document, and it is available on Government of Alberta their open source website. So I encourage you for some late night reading to have a look through it. I'm not the health professional, so I don't want to sort of get into specifics. David, the specific question was?
Will individual schools end up closing if an outbreak occurs? And we may need to have the definition of an outbreak maybe clarified a little bit.
This document will tell you that an outbreak in a school is 2 confirmed cases of COVID-19. Okay, so that is what would be defined as an outbreak in a school. 2 confirmed cases within a 14-day period is what that would say. That would not necessarily trigger a school closure. The consultation will happen with the zone medical officer of health, and they will be the ones who will put health measures in place if they need to. And the decision to close a school is made by the government, Minister of Education, in consultation with local authorities. That will include the Regional Health Authority, the school division, and that sort of thing. So it's not necessarily will it trigger a closure of a school. But again,
thank you.
Read this. That'll tell you everything, I promise.
Thank you, Fiona. Good answer. Anybody else want to jump in on that one? Anything else to add? No, she did a great job. She did. She was good. So, what is the procedure if my child develops symptoms while at school? Mary, you wanted to do that one? Thank you.
Gotcha. Well, what we're really hoping for is that we won't have families sending children who are not well to school. Any more than we want to see staff coming to school. So they all have the checklist, they all have a very good sense of what symptoms they need to be watching for, and in fact it's a legal requirement to isolate if you are symptomatic. If a child comes to school, and we all know what happens, they're well when they leave and they become symptomatic at school. For Calgary Catholic, and I expect it's a fairly standard process, that student will be isolated in a separate room and the parents will be called to come and pick them up immediately. They'll be removed from their cohort.
This is another one actually related to it, which you kind of have answered it, but if one of my children is showing symptoms, am I able to send my other children to school?
Oh goodness, that is, you know what, I'm going to defer to the physician on the panel for that one. That's, I would want to get that one from the physician.
Thank you, Mary.
Luckily, you've organized it well.
Yeah, we certainly have. We got it all covered, including my speaking notes. So I got it all looked after here. Go ahead.
So, sorry, the question is, what would happen if one of my...
Yeah, if a sibling, so I'll read the question. If one of my children is showing symptoms, am I able to send my other children to school?
So one of the things that we were updated on last night was, I think it's important for everyone to realize that the school boards, the teachers do not stand alone. We are also sort of a repository of information in terms of provincial mandates of how to handle some of these situations. So I can't go through every permutation combination, but just to give you an example, you know, we walked down an algorithm that said, well, my 15-year-old was exposed to somebody who was positive in this situation at soccer. She's at home. Can my 5-year-old now come in? So doctors do have these guidelines at their disposal, at their fingertips. I would hope that teachers also will as well. Again, every family situation will be specific, but there will be information for everybody online as to how to handle each specific situation.
Thank you.
And it changes. I mean, obviously, if the person at home is symptomatic, if the person's asymptomatic, it's so different.
Absolutely. Thank you.
David, I'm going to jump in if I may.
Please, Fiona. Thank you. And I have another question for you, Doctor, in a second, but go first.
I encourage everyone to look at the daily health check form. That's Alberta Health Services has put out a daily health form. If you can answer on behalf of your child no to every single one of those questions, your child can come to school. Okay, so it's the daily health check to pay attention to. If you can honestly answer no to every single one of those questions, then your child can come to school.
Just one more that may relate to this. Will staff and students be required to go through that daily health check? And what would that look like?
Yep. What it is, you will be provided a copy. It's online. It's connected to all of the re-entry documents. It's put out by Alberta Health Services as a daily health check form. So if for those who have jobs, you've probably have to do a similar kind of thing to be able to report to work. So to say, do you have any of these symptoms? I don't know the form off by top, but you know, do I have a fever? Do I have a cough? All of those kinds of things there is. You're not required to actually take the piece of paper, check it off, hand it in to your principal. You're not needed to do that. It's really just an awareness piece that as a parent, before I make my child get out of bed, have breakfast, grumble to have to go to the school bus, that I'm going to check in with my child and say, okay, you feeling okay today? Do you have any of this? No, you're okay, you're good? Okay, you can go to school. So it's really just a mind frame of every single day before that child walks out of your house to catch the bus to go to school, that you are going through this form and being able to answer no to all of the questions.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Very helpful. Very helpful. Now, Dr. Corrales, I have a question for you, and I know this is a tough one because there's a spectrum here, but the question is that came in, my child has asthma. Should I keep them at home? You want to address that one?
So I'll start by segueing from Fiona's point about chronic illness. I've had that question a couple times in my office over the past few weeks, and I'll just sort of take that point and run with it. I've had parents ask about, well, my son's has runny nose every single day of the year. My daughter has a headache twice a month. So what do I do about that? And we're sort of talking to each other, wondering if, if a letter will actually help. If I write a letter that says, well, there's a runny nose today, well, does that mean they don't have COVID tomorrow? Things like that. So I do also believe the answers that I found this week included the fact that, does your child have new symptoms? So I think some of those questions, and Fiona's nodding, and I got the thumbs up. So does your child have new symptoms? And that's very important, obviously, for teachers and the school board to take the baseline of that child's health into consideration. And sorry, the question was specifically about asthma?
It was specifically about asthma.
Absolutely. And again, just as I quickly kind of went through during my initial presentation, the infectious disease specialist last night did say if your child has well-controlled asthma, they are at low risk and they can go to school. Low risk, or well-controlled asthma, means no nighttime symptoms, no daytime symptoms, no need for their blue puffer every day. No missed school, a little bit ironically, and no need for, no restriction on physical activity because of puffer use.
I suspect if they had severe asthma, they would be in consultation with their healthcare provider.
That's the other thing, absolutely. If they weren't under good control, I don't think that would be consideration for them.
Great, okay. Thank you. Very helpful, very helpful. So Eric, I have a question for you. So you made a really important comment about the fact that you would worry about people if they weren't anxious, because this is a normal human response to going into something that's unfamiliar. Everything is unfamiliar. I was anxious walking into the church tonight because I didn't know, am I supposed to wear a mask? Am I not supposed to wear a mask? What's the rules? What's the protocol? We're all walking into something unfamiliar. My question for you, Eric, would be this. How does a parent distinguish between problematic anxiety that might require your services and, I'm going to say, normal, healthy anxiety? Could you make a distinction between those two? And what might, you kind of alluded to it in your presentation, but what might be a guide for parents to help them along that spectrum?
Sure. So I think when differentiating between, sort of normal and problematic anxiety, one of the key things to look for is there a cause for, is there a reasonable reason for the feelings that they're feeling? And so at this time with the pandemic, in this initial return to school phase, there's absolutely good cause and reason for feeling some amount of worry and anxiety, and that's going to differ for different children and for different families. And then I would start to get concerned if that feeling is prolonged and remains in place for a long period of time. And the other thing we often look for around anxiety is how much is that restricting quality of life, right? So is that preventing a child or youth from participating in sports or activities? Is that preventing a child or youth from participating in school assignments? Is that preventing a child or youth from participating in things like birthday parties or other age-appropriate activities with their peers? And so that's what starts to differentiate between sort of a more clinical level of symptomology and what would be considered sort of common and typical worry about a normal life circumstance.
Great, thank you. But parents, you don't want parents to get anxious about anxiety, because then you get really anxious about being anxious, and then you're really anxious.
Yeah, anxiety about anxiety is actually sometimes worse than the anxiety itself.
I believe that.
Yeah, so I think...
I just know that from my own experience. So
absolutely, and that can be sometimes a bit of a vicious cycle. Yeah, and I think, it's key for parents to normalize that, this is a new situation for everybody. It's normal to feel some amount of nervousness. It's very similar to, if your child or youth has had to do something in the past. I think a great example, if children have had to go to summer camp before, or going for that first sleepover at another friend's house. You give them lots of comforting, lots of encouragement, lots of information about what they can expect. I really liked, it sounded like one of the presenters on maybe the Catholic School Board, they created a series of videos. Literally just today with our 5-year-old, we were reading through a social story about what he could expect when he went to kindergarten, and talking about all the different precautions that be in place and sort of what he could expect in the classroom. And so really normalizing some of those things they're going to see and feel when they go to school.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And you might actually have a word to say about the next question. So
okay.
Hang on here. My child does not want to wear a mask. What can I do to help them adjust? Can you give me your perspective on that?
Yeah, so anytime somebody's facing something they're worried or nervous about, if that's a worry or fear that you need to overcome, typically the best way of approaching that is through gradual exposure to that thing that somebody is nervous or fearful of. So for example, if somebody was, most parents have been through the experience of teaching their child to ride a bike. So when you're teaching your child to ride a bike, you start out very slowly, you start out on flat terrain, you start out near your house, and gradually over time, as they build up confidence, you progress towards more and more challenging activities with that. And I would say it's similar for a mask, and so there's going to be some initial fear. I've not done this before. What does this look like? How is this going to feel? And you might have to do some testing around different masks and different fits and comfort and those kinds of things. But doing gradual exposure, do a really fun activity. Be like, let's go have a water fight in the backyard and wear a mask. I'm going to wear my mask too. You wear your mask. We'll have a really fun water fight, and then we're going to have some watermelon afterwards together and talk about what that was like. And then the next day you might go out and say, let's go for a walk around the block together with our masks on, and I'm going to do it too with you, right? It's that role modeling piece. If you want your child to be wearing their bike helmet, I know I'm using biking as an example a lot, you need to wear your bike helmet out when you go with them as well. So it's just
the way.
Pardon me?
Model as parents.
Model the way, absolutely, absolutely. And I think, the wonderful thing about kids, especially younger kids, is they're amazing at new things. They have to pick up new stuff all the time, and so we might be surprised at how well kids do with wearing masks.
I just wonder sometimes how parents will do with all this stuff. I worry more about the parents actually than the kids, because I think the kids are going to be really resilient. Is that would you say that?
So I think that, my first point that I made was around that role modeling, and I think we as parents have a duty to sort of really be cautious about what is our worry and our anxiety and what our children might be feeling about those experiences, and being really careful about how we share that worry with them in an age-appropriate way. Right.
I think you bring up a really good point about the importance of make sure that parents have our own support system, so that we don't rely on our kids to deal with our anxiety. So if I'm anxious, I need to have a good support system so that I can bring strength and encouragement and faith with my kids, eh?
Absolutely, yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else want to respond to the issue about masks and helping kids with masks? And would you? Do you want to speak to that? Okay.
I will echo that, and I will reiterate the modeling. I'll reiterate the fact that as we go back to routine, the new bits of the routine should be incorporated into the old bits. So grab your lunchbox and your masks, that sort of thing. And just teaching them now things that, like washing your hands, which should already be sort of part of the routine over the past 6 months. And other than that, Eric said it better than I could.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. By the way, we're getting very positive feedback in the little, I don't know what you call this, but on the little online feedback thing. People are really liking this and appreciative of it, so you should all know that. Anyway, how can parents and school boards protect children if they take the school bus? Who would like to?
Well, really, it's kind of the same answer as before. Don't send them to school, right? Like, that's how we can protect everybody on that bus, is for not sending a child to school if they have the sniffles, that sort of thing. There will be mandatory masks on the bus for students in this is for Rocky View Rule. Calgary Catholic's different. Rocky View Rule, there will be mandatory mask use on the bus for kids from grade 4 to 12, and that's mandated by public health for that. Again, it will be the same kind of protocols that are in place in the school will be on the bus as well. Hand sanitizer as you walk on, go to your designated seat. There will be a seating plan. I know this is really not hurtful. I know one of my children in particular is not so happy that he's not going to get to sit with his friends on the bus. He has to sit with his brother. and you know that. So there will be seating plans. You will, families will be sitting together. You need to sit in that seat. Rocky View has the scanners, like the bus passes to get on and off the bus. You will be asked to have your scanner, and that will help us in contact tracing. So if in the unfortunate circumstance that somebody, there is a positive case of COVID, we can say who was on the bus at that particular day and time, and where were they seating. So that will help in that sort of contact tracing kind of piece. So hopefully that kind of answers the question a little bit there.
You bet. Absolutely.
And
That's great.
Mary wanted
Thanks,
to
Fiona.
add?
If I can just dovetail.
Jump in there, Mary. Yeah, you bet. Thanks for taking care of us.
Thank you. And, you know, Fiona's just highlighted one of the nicest things about the relationships that school boards have with each other. We have an excellent relationship with Rocky View Schools, as we have coterminous boundaries. And one of the things that we share is our busing and our transportation, and that's CMV of the province. So we're very, very fortunate there. And everything that Fiona has shared is something that would certainly happen with our smaller satellite cities and municipalities. Our kids in Calgary Catholic are riding the bus CTS from junior high on, so they will be masked. All of our kids will be masked. The drivers will be masked, and they'll be completing the same health assessment before they get on the bus. We will have assigned seating, and kids will be cohorted with their families, and buses sanitized before and after. Seating plans are mandatory, and that's critical for contact tracing. The onloading and offloading is very important and intentional as well. So the kids will be loaded to the back first, and then up to the front, and then the reverse, so that there's as little as jostling and bumping into each other as possible. And one small point, buses can usually be typically really noisy places. Kids will be encouraged to not be doing a lot of loud singing or shouting, because that's one of the ways you can spread. So they will be encouraged to have a quiet ride in. But to the greatest extent possible, we've mitigated what we can, and we're confident. Thanks.
I was just going to say, hug a bus driver, but I guess you can't hug them, but at least express appreciation for what bus drivers are going to be going through these days. And you can put teacher on that list too. Extra masks for kids if they lose them at school. There's lots of masks. Lots of masks. What else we got here? Oh, I'm thinking of keeping my child home for the first few weeks to see how things go. Would that be a good idea? Oh, you know what? I'll take anything. Sure.
For Calgary Catholic, as many jurisdictions do, we have created an online grade 1 to 9 option to complement the high school option that we have. We have made a departure from what some districts are doing, in that if you do want to do the online, you need to commit for a year. And that's important on a number of fronts to preserve continuity of education and what has been taught to a certain point, and also to manage wild fluctuations in class sizes for parents who may choose to go back. I will say that we're sitting at about over 10% of our families have chosen an online option, and they are committing for the year. We're doing a second catchment because people seem very interested in it, but from our perspective, you need to commit to either the online or the in-class. But yeah, the pickup's been impressive. Thanks.
I would say that's an indicator. If a parent wants to keep their child out for 2 weeks, I think that's an indicator of anxiety on the parent's part. And if they could get support with that, and my way of dealing with anxiety is move toward it. And say, put your arm around your kid and say, you know what, you can handle this. I don't know if I can, but you can handle this. Anyway, Eric, you may want to address this.
So I think I chatted a little bit about this, and I think it's a really personal decision. I chatted about this in my sort of remarks around everybody is going to have a different set of health circumstances, a different set of life circumstances. So it's hard to know for the individuals that is asking this question, or the people that are considering this, what their situation is. I think one of the key things to think about is what is the sort of social emotional impact around a child missing those first few key weeks of school, where there's lots of bonding and forming, and lots of relationships that are sort of created that are going to last through the school year. And I think that's what I would be really thinking about as a parent. If I'm deciding to have my child miss those first few weeks of school, yes, you might then get to see some data about how numbers are looking by mid or late September. However, your child might miss some of those key experiences around that sort of social norming and forming that's going to happen at the school. And then that might also then present another set of challenges that you would deal with later on in the fall.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you. Yes, come. Which one?
I guess just briefly, I'd like to just sort of say from a transmission virology standpoint and scientific standpoint, it doesn't entirely make sense to wait for the first few weeks, even if that was available. I would guess that medically what that parent might try is trying to assess is how the first few weeks go and whether there's going to be some ins and outs. And I mean, this is here to stay for the time being. So whether it's September or December or who knows when, until we get a vaccine, this is sort of the way things are going to go, even if you were allowed to go back and forth.
Thank you. Just organizing these questions here. We got it? How do I respond to other community members when they judge how my family is dealing with this pandemic? Anybody want to tackle that one? Eric, we're getting you busy here.
I have to think about my response to this one. How do I, can you repeat the question?
How do I respond to other community members when they judge how my family is dealing with COVID-19?
I think, again, sort of context is everything here. I think, if that's somebody you had a really close relationship with or somebody that was a close friend with, it might be helpful to have a conversation with them about why it is that your family's making a different choice. And I think that's where we don't always realize or recognize who has got some greater vulnerability around COVID-19. It's not if I go out and I hurt and break my leg, it's obvious I've got crutches, I'm, walking around, that sort of, that vulnerability is very visible. I think some of the vulnerability with COVID-19 is not very visible, and so I think that is what is sometimes leading to that judgment. And so I actually think it's more on all of us to have that compassion that that everybody is doing their very best in a really difficult situation. And again, sort of like I said, nobody has this kind of crystal ball to know exactly what the future is going to look like, and everybody needs to make a decision that's best for them and their family. And we have to really do our best to accept that those decisions might be different than ones we make, and that's okay.
Good answer on the fly there. So I think most of these questions are covered. I do want to involve Amy. And Amy, I'm not quite sure how to ask this, but would you advise that this would be a good time to decide to homeschool your child under these conditions? And how would you know that? And maybe you've already addressed that, but I would just be very curious as to your answer about that.
Say it again.
Would this be a good time for parents to decide to homeschool their children?
Well, to be honest, right now, if you are thinking about it, you are in very good company. There is a lot of families across the province. I know our board is dealing with tons of calls. There's other boards, just talking to other friends that work at other boards. This is a time where there has never been a better time to ask questions. We are always, a homeschool community is a very welcoming community, and we are always open to people joining in and making this either a one-year choice or a multi-year choice. It's always an open thing every year, but this year, if you if this is a year that you're looking at starting, you will not be alone. There is a lot of families that are looking at starting, and boards are really looking at how we can best support new families, especially in the numbers that we have, bringing alongside mentorship, making sure that we've hired additional support teachers, really ensuring that we've got the support that we need to bring in a large influx of new families. So there's a lot of questions out there, and you are not alone if you are looking at this as being a solid option for your family. So
I have heard, and I would like you to maybe help correct the myth around this, but I have heard that homeschooling is really only effective when you make a choice to say, this is what we want to do, as opposed to feeling compelled to do it, or doing it out of anxiety, or doing it out of fear. Do you have any thoughts about that, that criteria?
I think any choice made when you feel that you are forced to make a choice is never going to be quite as positive an experience. But that being said, a lot of good can also come of those times when I've had a lot of families that are calling me and saying, I've always thought about this, or I've been interested in this, and this has been the impetus for me to take this on. So there's a lot of that. And if you are feeling like I don't have a choice, maybe for health reasons, maybe for other reasons that you really want to be in that community this year, just remember you're never stuck. That's the most important thing I always reassure families with, is you are not making a decision for the rest of your child's education. You're making a decision that's best for you and your family at this moment, this year. You'll be surrounded by support from the boards, from support teachers. There will be a lot of people that come alongside you, and if it's a decision that works for you for this year, and then you want to make a different decision next year, you are free to do so. You're never trapped in any situation. So I hope that would help if people are feeling that it's something they're scared about.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I appreciate the fact that all the resources that are available to parents, both in our public system, in our Catholic system, and in our homeschooling system, I think it's just inspiring to see what's available for parents.
Yeah, there's never been a better time to look at all of your options and make the best decision for your family, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else want to add anything that you said, oh, would have liked to have said that in my speech, but I neglected to? Anybody want to jump up and just add another 2 bits here before we wind up? Any questions from the audience that you decided that you would like to ask? Have we covered all these off? Have I missed any? I've missed the registration deadline. What should I do? Who wants to cover that one? Fiona, do I hear you coming up behind us?
Yeah. Can I assume that the question is referring to the registration deadline for online learning?
That's all I have, so I'm going to assume that's the case.
Okay, that's my assumption with this answer, that if you've missed the deadline for the online learning, from a Rocky View Schools perspective, that deadline was yesterday morning at 9 a.m. I know principals have been taking emails and questions from families who weren't able to make a decision in that time frame based on certain circumstances and individual kinds of things, but there has now been a hard deadline that has passed from this afternoon. If you want to, from a Rocky View Schools perspective, if you want to enroll in Rocky View Online, then I would suggest that you reach out to your principal and say, I missed the deadline, I'm sorry, can you please put me on the waiting list for Rocky View Schools Online if you're wanting to start it right now. I know we're going to do our best to be able to accommodate everybody, but as Mary maybe commented, we need to make sure that resources are available, that class lists are made, that teachers are assigned. Those are all things that cannot be done with a snap of a finger. We will be reallocating teachers who thought they were going to be in a school, now they're learning online. So that takes a little bit of time. So if you're wanting to do that now, I recommend reach out to your principal, have some conversation with him or her. With that, there will be an opportunity in January for families to swap if you want to. So if you're in in-class learning for the fall and come January, you know what, it's just not working for you, it's you want to switch, there will be an opportunity to switch to online, and the opposite. If you have chosen online for the fall, but come September, you know, things are calmer, you really want to do that, then there will be an opportunity to switch at that time at the end of January over the semester switch.
Thank you,
Okay.
Fiona. All right, I think we'll wind it up. We got to be out of here in an hour and a half, and I just want to end with just a few very brief comments. I've been very inspired tonight. And I can tell you, if I had kids in school today, I would feel more confident leaving this meeting than when I came. And what inspires me the most is how much our community cares. You know, if you read, if you happen to get onto Cochrane Rant and Rave, we're pretty brutal with each other today. And it just indicates that I think we're all uncertain, we're afraid, we don't know quite what to do. You know, I heard once that violence is what happens when we don't know what to do with our suffering. And what I want to say in closing tonight is everybody here who's listening to this needs to know that you are not alone. There are resources in this community. There are places that you can go to get support for whatever help you need, whatever questions. We're in this together. Let's bring compassion. Let's bring a sense of caring. Let's bring understanding. Let's bring conversation. If we find ourselves getting impatient and uptight, which I certainly have this last 6 months, there are resources to help me. There are resources to help all of us to bring a little more compassion to our world. I want to thank this community for caring enough to host this event. I want to thank every one of these panel members who have given of their time tonight to be here and to offer their wisdom, their perspective, and their caring. We're all in this together. Let's remember that, and I wish you all the best. And let's just keep in mind that our work with our children, there is no more important work. Let's keep confident, and we'll get our kids through this, and we'll get ourselves through this. We are taught, you know, this whole, I'll just say one more thing. This whole, our world, we're used to getting everything we want. And I think this whole crisis is an opportunity to help us remind ourselves, you can't get everything you want in life. We'll get everything we need, but we won't get everything we want, and maybe that's a good thing. Take care, everybody. Be safe. Keep yourself well, and keep your spirit open and your heart open. Thanks, everybody. Oh, and this session, I just want to remind you, is being taped. Thank you. I am appreciative of my assistance here. This session is being taped and will be available for anybody who missed it. Stay tuned. Thank you very much.